Tua Tagovailoa and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine are not just hard names to pronounce, but they're also sneaky good fantasy starts in Week 12. We dig into the best sleepers and DFS plays of the week on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, but I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we have made it through the week. We've gone through all of our positional rankings. We helped you with the waiver wire, but now we're going to give you our favorite sleepers of the week. And some of these guys are still on waivers, right? If you need a desperation play. And then also start our daily fantasy football talk, because that's always fun as well. Let's start with our sleepers. One player at each position that we agree on. Right at quarterback, it's Tua Tagovailoa. I say his last name different every time. But Tua, it seems like the Dolphins are coming along, right? And last week he puts up 3 touchdowns, nearly 24 fantasy points. And I like his matchup against the Patriots this week.
Yeah, it's been a weird season for Tua. I mean, we thought there was going to be bigger implications of his latest concussion, but it's just went through the protocol, took his time, came back. And essentially, he's picked up where he left off, maybe getting the ball out quicker here. So I do like that. And I also like the way this Dolphins offense is trending. They've had to make some adjustments, right, where Jalen Waddle's not coming through, or they're taking away the deep ball. So you got to get rid of the ball quickly. And that's good, I think, for Tua, because that means less hits. Get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands faster. We saw him score on a nice little play to the side of the end zone last week. He had Jonnu Smith on a heater here, so he doesn't really need Jalen Waddle too much here if he's going to get touchdowns from other guys. That's the bottom line. Is where is he going to get the touchdowns from? Last year it was pretty much dominated by Raheem Mostert at the goal line. That's not happening again this year, and Devin Achane is more of a big play touchdown guy. So I think now you look at Tua, the Patriots gave up 4 touchdown passes to Matthew Stafford last week. They give it up in the red zone. They cannot cover anyone outside or inside at this point in the season. I thought they were going to trade some of their defensive backs who are struggling, but when you look at this, it's a great matchup. It's at home. He does better at home. All things line up here for Tua to be at least very solid for you as a QB1 in the top 12 this week.
Yeah, this defensive matchup, to get even deeper into it, it's Tua's been really, really good against the blitz this year, and the Patriots defense, they're the heaviest. They utilize the blitz at the heaviest rate among all defenses this year. So really nice matchup for him. And you brought up Stafford, what he did last week against the Patriots, but even Mason Rudolph, Aaron Rodgers, CJ Stroud, they all scored at least 17 points against the Patriots as well. So we might not expect Tua to put up 30 points in this game, but he certainly can have an 18-plus point performance and have a nice week for you if you're looking for a quarterback this week. Moving on to our sleeper running back of the week. I feel like we went a little bit higher than normal. We didn't go as deep, but Bucky Irving against the Giants, it's a great matchup. They're allowing the most yards per carry to running backs this season. Bucky's been on the field a lot lately, and what he gets is those red zone carries, those goal line carries. Like, that's all of his, and we do expect the Buccaneers to be able to put up quite a lot of points on the Giants, so there should be a lot of scoring opportunities for Irving in this game.
Yeah, and I looked at his rookie year, and I took a deep dive. He's been really good. He's just playing behind Rachaad White, who's been better, maybe motivated by this presence, because Bucky Irving's averaging 5.1 yards per carry. He's looked very good when he gets the ball. And part of it is that the passing game opens things up for the running game, and now it will with Mike Evans returning. They have to worry about the deep ball here if you're the Giants, and the deep ball is a bad thing for the Giants, right? They just give up a lot of it. They also struggle against power running backs. Bucky Irving is that. So this could be a great 1-2 punch with Evans returning. He practiced in full, so he's going to be good to go with a hamstring. So you open the field, stretch it for Baker Mayfield. You're going to have a lot of running lanes open for Rachaad White and Bucky Irving in this game. So it's an interesting combination with the Giants struggle with deep balls. and running game. They're actually a good pass rush, but they somehow give up a lot of balls up front, and they're good up front, but they're not good against the run. So it's a weird defense, the Giants are, but I look at this being a great game for the Buccaneers, and it doesn't hurt that the elements are there. It's not going to be a bad day out there in East Rutherford, but you think the Bucs would play with the lead and also close it out with Irving and White a lot in the second half.
I will say, if you're like, okay, well, I need someone deeper this week with 6 teams on bye. Trey Benson's still out there in 70% of leagues. And before their bye, he got 12 carries in that week 10 game. He put up a career high 87 scrimmage yards. If he gets 12 touches in week 12 against the Seahawks defense, I do think he will be score double-digit points. And he has actually scored double-digit points in in each of his last 2 games. So, he's an option out there as well if you needed to go deeper. Moving on to wide receiver, Titans wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. He is just a touchdown monster. He's scored at least 11 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's playing a 94% of the Titans offensive snaps since DeAndre Hopkins was traded, averaging 12 fantasy points per game in those games without Hopkins. He should be thought of as a guy that can be a flex option, especially in good matchups. And this matchup against the Texans is a really good one.
Yeah, and they don't really throw to many people in this offense. If you look into it, I mean, you don't have Tyjae Spears probably this week. He's battling another injury, concussion, I believe. So he's not around out of the backfield to throw it out to. They don't throw a lot to Tony Pollard. You'd think they would throw a lot to Chiga Okonkwo, but that does not happen. So pretty much it goes through Calvin Ridley, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Pretty much these are the garbage time production collectors here, right? And you look at the Texans, their secondary is pretty weak. They give up the garbage points. I mean, last week, they had CeeDee Lamb have a good game, but they also unleashed the speed of Javonte Turpin, and he scored on a long touchdown. So they struggle after the catch with Westbrook-Ikhine. It scored a 98-yard touchdown, ran past everybody there for Will Levis last week. So he's kind of the sneaky big play guy. I thought Ridley would be more of that, but he's not done that much, and partly because I think Westbrook-Ikhine maybe having that extra year with Will Levis has helped. Definitely some extra year time with practice. So I think they have a pretty good chemistry, and that helps his production value as well.
Yeah, I fully expect him to at least catch a touchdown in this game against this Texans defense that has allowed the most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers in the league this year. Now, tight end, it's always a tricky one to find a sleeper tight end. But we're going with Will Dissly, and we know he had a great week last week. The 4 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown. But it looked like that connection between Herbert and Dissly just looked like really, really pretty in that game. And he gets a fantastic matchup again. Like the thing with last week was he had a great matchup against the Bengals. Well, now he has a great matchup against the Ravens, who have a lot of fantasy points to tight ends. So I fully that he has the opportunity to put up a similar game to last week.
Yeah, I just have to mention first to reward all of you that you listened to the previous show Thursday. We broke down Pat Freiermuth versus Will Dissly. They were ranked right next to each other for me. 4 for 59 for Freiermuth. We'll take it. That is one of his best games of the season. So I'm expecting Will Dissly to clear that bar very highly here in this game. So when you look at that, so 4 for 59 is the floor here for Will Dissly. I'm going to call it right now. He did score on a 20-yard pass last week, so he can stretch the field. He's always been a good athlete going back to his Seahawks days. He just has had a lot of injuries in his career. So when you look at Dissly, I think they found their guys. We talked about it. Quentin Johnson, Ladd McConkey, Will Dissly. This is a rotation of people that Justin Herbert wants to throw down the field to, and the Ravens stink against the tight end, high volume. It adds up really well. Will Dissly has really been great the last 2 weeks, so you get a third week of Will Dissly, and this might say, hey, tight end is a bad spot. Dissly might be here to stay to produce. And keep in mind, it's a Greg Roman offense. And everyone said they're going to go after Colston Loveland, probably in Michigan next year in the first round of the draft, but we should have known the tight end was going to come and get open at some point for Greg Roman, and it's happened here in the second half of the season.
So many revenge games in this matchup. Greg Roman revenge game against the Ravens as well. We're going to transition now into our daily fantasy talk. Listen, if you don't play daily fantasy, maybe you should, right? Like if your actual fantasy team is struggling, this is a really fun way to still be involved in fantasy football. But if you don't want to get involved, we're still just talking about guys that we really love this week to play for fantasy. So you're still going to learn a lot. So stick with us. We'll get into our favorite picks of the week and talk through our FanDuel lineup to continue the show right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is sponsored by BetterHelp. And if you haven't heard of BetterHelp, it's the best way to get therapy online for you. And we go through a lot of challenges in life. And sometimes we're too busy to slow down and just say, we need some help or someone to help us talk through some things that may be on our mind to get us back on track, find the way back to what makes us happy in life, getting that roadmap. And sometimes there's someone out there that can do it a lot better than we can. And most of the time that is true. And BetterHelp is going to help you find that person. If you had a chance to go to therapy, but you're not sure if you like the in-person, well, BetterHelp is there for you. It's completely online, and that makes it very comfortable for you. Just give it a try because it's designed to be convenient for you, flexible and suited to your schedule and your needs. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. It's the way to go this holiday season. It can be really stressful, and it's Thanksgiving. So let the gratitude flow. It's a good time to do that. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP, BetterHelp.com/lockedon to save on your first month today.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I use this app all the time for plenty of reasons, but some of the reasons why I love the Game Time app is you get a view of your seat so before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. It's so quick to buy tickets on that app. It's 2 taps and you're set. I'm super impatient, so that's very important to me. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. They have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantee, and job loss assurance. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This is honestly like my favorite part of the week is when we discuss picks of the week. If you don't play on PrizePicks, you can download the PrizePick app and play along with us. We're just picking players that we think will do better than what their projection is. Or you can do worse, but that's no fun. We are a fantasy football podcast. So Vinny, give me your favorite PrizePick pick of the week.
Okay, this is not going to be great for fantasy players at all, but it is going to be great for fantasy players because it's a player we've talked about before. And I looked at this number and I was like, really? It's out there? It's available for this game? It's 2.5 rushing yards for Tua Tagovailoa against the Patriots. Now, 2.5? This is crazy. I know Tua in a lot of games doesn't run. Matthew Stafford had 0 rushing yards against the Patriots last week, but look, the Patriots have given up something in every game. I mean, most games, at least the guy gets 10 rushing yards against them. So 2.5, I mean, I think Tua maybe 2.5 yards tall. Okay, maybe not. He's not that big, but like he can fall over and get this at one point. And I think the Patriots will open things up. A lot of the teams that actually give up a lot of rushing yards to quarterbacks, the Jaguars, the Falcons, the Bengals, these teams are all off this week. So I had to dig a little bit deeper. I did really think about Jane Daniels, but his number just a little bit high, just in case they smashed the Cowboys. It was like 48.5. So I just pivoted to this one. It was right out there, 2.5. Now, Tua needs to run once, and I feel like I'll get it. But let's get it for fantasy as well. Let's make it a 3-yard rushing touchdown for Tua Tagovailoa to make everyone happy in fantasy, DFS, whoever's playing him this week.
Yeah, and we know he's not scared about getting that concussion. He's still trying to tackle guys with his head forward. So he's not worried about that when it comes to running. Yeah, that's just one rush attempt, and he should have it. Mine is actually, this guy will help you in your fantasy lineups, and not just with the rushing, but it's Malik Neighbors with the receiving, more than 13.5 fantasy points. So he has receiving projections up there as well that you could go with. But I like the fantasy points because on PrizePicks, they do PPR, full PPR. You get a point per reception. And we know that Neighbors is going to be targeted like crazy, right? He's had at least 10 targets in 6 of the last 7 games. Now, we don't know how productive he will be on those receptions, right? How many yards per reception he'll get, but you get a point per reception. So that's why I like going with his fantasy points here. Again, it's 13.5 points. We've seen Tommy DeVito support wide receivers to this type of performance. Darius Slayton last year had 18 points with him as a starter. Jalen Hyatt scored 16 points with him as a starter. Wan'Dale Robinson had 2 games where he hit this 13.5 points that Malik Neighbors needs with Tommy DeVito as a starter. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, DeAndre Hopkins, Rashad Bateman, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and Bub Memes have all scored at least 15 points against the Buccaneers since week 5. Malik Neighbors can do it even with Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, I'll hold on to my Tommy DeVito pick. It's coming, so just wait for that. But I do like it because I do like Tommy DeVito this week. So let's look at this secondary. They can't cover Malik Neighbors. He's going to get targeted a ton. I told you about the youth movement. The Giants are totally turning the page. They're really getting rid of Daniel Jones, it looks like. So they're cleaning all the bad mojo of what they think out of there and going all to the young players in this one. So Neighbors is a centerpiece of what their offense and quarterback situation is going to be going forward. So they want to get him going in this game for sure. So I went to another quarterback here. So I've got all 3 quarterback ones, which is unusual. But I have Justin Herbert, not for his rushing, but the Ravens give up on average more than 300 yards passing per game. It's over actually 305. And they're playing Monday night. They are very good against the run. That's number one. Why the Ravens give up so many passing yards? They're really bad against the pass. So it's like the perfect storm there. Justin Herbert's been on fire. The Chargers, I don't think, will have a lot of rushing success in this game. And the matchups are great. And look at this gap. I mean, if they're giving up 305, I've had Justin Herbert more than 255.5. That gives us a 50-yard cushion there of what the Ravens give up on average. It's not the Ravens like kind of even just a game, right? This is the average game by a quarterback is 300. I mean, you'll see 400 and 500 in some of these big games that come out against the Ravens. So again, Herbert's going to be ready. They're going to let him loose. We talked about Will Dissly. We talked about his other receivers. We like Quentin Johnson this week. But 255, you don't need that much to get it done, and I think you will.
Yeah, I love Herbert this week. I was sad because in our FanDuel lineup, we couldn't have him because he plays on Monday night. But yeah, Herbert's one of my favorite quarterbacks this week. He should hit the 255. Now I'm going with Herbert's old teammate, Austin Eckler, who's now with the Commanders. But his projection on PrizePicks is 46.5 rushing plus receiving yards. So scrimmage yards, right? That is incredibly low since he has only not hit that number one time this season, and he's only gotten hotter as of recently, right? Like he's looking so good. He's playing so well. He's playing on more snaps. Even with Brian Robinson Jr. back last week, he still played on 52% of the team snaps. He's still at 96 scrimmage yards last week. But over the last 4 weeks, 58 yards, 83, 51, 96. He only needs 46.5 against the Cowboys. Like the Cowboys have allowed the 5th most scrimmage yards per game to running backs this season. And again, they've only gotten worse as the season has gone. And the reason why I'm going with the scrimmage yards is because we never know what way the Commanders are going to use Eckler. Is it going to be on the ground? Is it going to be through the air? It's going to be one of those. And likely he's going to have 47 yards either on the ground or through the air, like just by itself. But I'm taking both. And I just think this is such an easy one.
Yeah, and a lot of people are on Brian Robinson Jr. this week. We like him a lot.
Yeah, I like Brian Robinson Jr. as well.
Yeah, it just the numbers are getting too high. Even I was looking at him on FanDuel and on PrizePicks, and I'm like, yeah, I know everyone's on it, right? Because they're playing the Cowboys. Everyone knows it, so that's a good pivot there to Eckler, who's been very productive. Really, this offense goes through 3 people mainly. It goes to Terry McLaurin, it goes through the two running backs. That's about it. And Jeremy McNichols does a little bit. Zach Ertz, they occasionally throw to Luke McCaffrey. But essentially, this offense is a lot about Austin Eckler and Terry McLaurin when they throw the ball. So I love that pick by you. My final one is Tommy DeVito. If you like Malik Neighbors, and we do here in this matchup against the Buccaneers, the Bucs also are not a very good pass defense. Tommy DeVito's at 181.5 against the Buccaneers at home. So I'm going more than that. The Buccaneers have allowed this number in every game this season. Randomly, the one quarterback who didn't hit it was Jalen Hurts, but the Bucs were run incessantly over by the Eagles in that game. So that's why. But every other quarterback, even Jane Daniels hit it on an off game against this team, even while he was rushing. So I look at this and say, that was in week 1, by the way, Jane Daniels, like he just got barely over this number. But again, only one quarterback hasn't done it. It's Jalen Hurts, because that was an anomalous high rushing game. I don't think the Giants are going to be running all over the Buccaneers in this game and pulling away. They're just not going to do it. So I look at Tommy DeVito, 181.5. We need this because we're investing a lot in Malik Neighbors. We can't have him throwing 181.5. That means Malik Neighbors has a very solid, strong cap on what he can do. So I love Tommy DeVito this week for that number. I don't love him to play in any kind of seasonal format, but that number is standing out like a sore thumb for me.
Yeah, and you never know. When guys get in for their first time in the season, they have this bump up. So Tommy DeVito could have this huge game and then fall apart after that. I like it. And then my last one's just an easy one. Travis Kelce, more than 62.5 receiving yards against the Panthers. He had 8 receiving yards last week. So I guess that's why his projection is lower. But in the 3 weeks prior, 90 yards, 100 yards, 64 yards. Before that, 70 yards, 89 yards. Getting 10 plus targets a game, right? Like last week was just a tough matchup against the Bills. They clearly were focusing in on stopping Kelce. The Panthers will try to focus on stopping Kelce. They don't have the people to do it. Like Kelce's going to hit the 62.5 receiving yards. He's going to get 10 targets. Like I feel very good about that. So I took the easy, low hanging fruit there. We are now going to move on to our daily fantasy football lineup with FanDuel. So we'll discuss our FanDuel lineup to close out this week's show right after a quick break. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. You can use points to jet off on a dream vacation. You could put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotel and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're honestly just designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app and watch your rent game get a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Point Guys and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Again, that's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. All right, let's hop into our FanDuel lineups. We do the main slate, which now does include the Sunday night games. So all of the 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and Sunday night games, those players are available to us. I went a little risky with my quarterback. Vinny, who did you go with at your quarterback?
Yeah, this is why astute viewers of the show on YouTube, I'm throwing my hat in the ring totally. That's why I usually have a hat on, but I'm in transit, so I had to record somewhere else. But I am throwing my hat, going all in on Tommy DeVito this week. And why?
You're going even riskier than I am.
Yeah, well, yes. There's nothing riskier than this, but 6,000 at quarterback. I mean, I'm looking for 3x return, and this is the best way to get 3x return. I mean, 18 points is all I need to get it. could see him having a big game here, throwing very often against the Bucks. I'm not saying I'm going to go against seasonal. He's a bigger risk because he maybe have more at stake. But here, it's a good tournament play. It's a good pivot away from maybe what else is there. I think he's actually going to have some high ownership because you just don't get a starting quarterback this cheap who's going to drop back 25 times. It's just not going to happen. So when they made that change to Daniel Jones, taking him out, and they said, okay, we're going to start DeVito, the prices did not adjust in time. So you got to jump on that when you can. So that's what I'm doing. At 6,000 here for Tommy DeVito as my starting quarterback in my FanDuel mock lineup. So I'm curious to see what your choice is now after my choice.
Mine's actually not that much more expensive than yours, and it's also risky. It's Will Levis for the Titans at 6,700. He looks a lot better since coming back from the shoulder injury. He's not making the stupid mistakes. He's passing for like 8.7 yards per attempt. The Texans are giving up the second most passing touchdowns this year. And I just think like this could be a high scoring game, like a sneaky high scoring game. I think the Titans will put up more points than we're expecting. So I'm going with Will Levis as my quarterback. And my stack here, I'll just say what my stack is. It's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. We talked about him earlier. Expect him to get that touchdown at least. So he was super cheap at 5,500. I went with him to do that stack.
Yeah, I do like that. Obviously, I had to do a stack. I'm going to make you guess who that stack is with. We talked about him a lot earlier. Of course, it's Malik Neighbors. It's at 8,200. He's my top wide receiver in this lineup. So that was easy choice, right? I mean, we know he's got to have a big game if Neighbors is going to have a big game, or DeVito and vice versa, right? So that made a lot of sense that you went with NWI and Levis. Now, I'll give my running backs real quick. I paid up for one of them. It's Kenneth Walker III, and that gave me the extra salary that DeVito spends. So I'm going for that. I can see him have multiple touchdowns at home against the Cardinals, so I'm going there. And again, a little risky with my other back, saving some money, is Javonte Williams. He actually had a very good game the first time against the Raiders. He was the hot hand last week. They've had the evidence of him going off on the Raiders in the previous matchup. Raiders think against the run. He was only 6,200 as well. So that's my backfield.
I also went with Javonte Williams for all the reasons you just mentioned. I don't know if I can trust Sean Payton that he'll actually like keep with one running back, but it's a good matchup, and I needed to go cheaper at that position for my running back too. So I did go with Javonte Williams. For my running back one, I went with Evan Achan. He is just like he's so good, right? And he's getting all the work. Raheem Mostert has -2 rushing yards over the last 2 weeks. So I was willing to pay up for HN. He was expensive, 9,100, but I think he comes through with at least a 23-point game. So I was worth paying for it.
Yeah, I like that choice totally. I mean, I thought about him as my pay up there, but instead I went there with Walker and Williams combination. Now, I did save some money at wide receiver, and I saved some money for my flex. I kind of filled out wide receiver first to see what money I would have left. But I went with Juwan Jennings. We've talked about his matchup against the Packers. He is in a really good spot against that secondary at 6,700. I think he's the one individual matchup that is fantastic here for Brock Purdy. So I'm going to go with that with Juwan Jennings at 67. The secondary overall is pretty good, but in terms of one to exploit, I think Jennings can do that. And I'm going with Josh Downs. Again, garbage points will be had. He's going to have a lot of volume against the Lions this week. And you look at the ability of Anthony Richardson, he's just going to keep putting the ball up for downs. I mean, Michael Pittman has been hurt and whatever. He's not even in the picture all season long here. So Josh Downs is clearly their number one target all over the field. And he looks really good, running routes, doing all the things. So the talent is manifesting there for sure.
You know, I love me some Josh Downs. I did not go with him, though. So my other two wide receivers, I actually did a double stack with the Titans.
Oh, wow.
So not only Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I also have Calvin Ridley in here. And you mentioned earlier, pretty much all of these targets go to these two guys, right? Yeah, Calvin Ridley has definitely taken over as getting a lot of targets without DeAndre Hopkins there. If I expect Will Levis to have a good game, it can't just be because I think Westbrook-Ikhine could come down with a touchdown and 50 yards, right? Calvin Ridley also has to have a good game. So I have both of those guys in there I'm really depending on the Titans this week. That's scary. And then I have a former Titan as my other wide receiver. It's AJ Brown. I paid up for him at 8,500, which was not even close. I mean, it was close to the top, but he was like the 5th most expensive wide receiver, and I have him as my wide receiver 1 this week. I think he's going to eat up on the Rams, so I wanted to pay up for him for sure.
That's a really good choice. I'm going to give you my flex first, and then we'll get into our tight ends. My flex is actually Tyreek Hill. That's where I paid up at wide receiver. So I didn't intend to do that, but I had a lot of money left over, and I said, I'll go after Tyreek Hill. We like him this week. I like him to have one of those patented big games. I thought about him in the stack with Tua, but then I saw Tommy DeVito to save a lot of money and get some other guys in there. So that's how I looked at it. But Tyreek Hill getting into my flex spot. So really, if you want to break it down, he's my top receiver, and then you have Neighbors, Jennings, and Downs.
I did try to get Tyreek Hill in. I couldn't afford him. I decided to pay up at tight end instead of getting Tyreek Hill. I went with Travis Kelce at the tight end because I just feel like he's going to be such a difference maker in my tight end spot this week against the Panthers, who are giving up the most fantasy points to tight ends. I think he has a massive week. So I wanted to pay up for him. And then in my flex, I went with Austin Eckler, who I brought up in my PrizePicks picks. He's been great. I mean, he looks great. He has an amazing matchup. Yeah, I would love Brian Robinson in here, but he was way more expensive. So I'm just going to go with the other guy who's also going to put up points against the Cowboys.
All right. Speaking of the Cowboys, I saved some money. I had to save some money at tight end. Again, I took advantage of another opportunity that was developing, and I took Luke Schoonmaker at $4,500. I'm doing it. He had a solid game last week. Jake Ferguson is in the concussion protocol, short week. It's not going to happen, right? He's not going to be out there against the Commanders. So when you look at Schoonmaker, I mean, who's Cooper Rush thrown to? A lot of CeeDee Lamb, a lot of Schoonmaker. He is getting the ball out quickly. He's dumping it off. I feel like even more so than Dak Prescott, we've tried to see Cooper Rush throw to the tight end. So it was just too cheap. And I said, do I want to go Travis Kelce and get a receiver that I didn't love? Or do I want to just, hey, try it with Schoonmaker, know that he's only 4,500. Can I get 10 points from him? Possibly, right? But if he gets the kind of volume he got last week on Monday night, I think we can definitely be there. And that was after Ferguson left the game and he played in the game. So I think Schoonmaker is going to get all those Ferguson targets this week. And that's all I have there.
Nice. I like it. And then lastly, with defense, I'm going with the Bears against the Vikings. I needed a cheaper defense, but they could pick off Sam Darnold 3 times. Sam Darnold is bad again. So I expect the Bears to still play good defense. They can allow some yards, some points, but they're going to get those turnovers.
I realized I may have talked a little too much about Luke Schoonmaker there, but I'm also saying if you're hurting on a bye week like I am, and I don't have Dalton Kincaid and some of these other players that I'm playing, he is a good bye-week plug-and-play this week, as well as Will Dissly. Dissly is just probably harder to get along with Hunter Henry and others. But Schoonmaker, again, if you need a pinch guy who's probably going to be out there in leagues, you can play him. Just confirm that we know that Ferguson's out. And so talk more about Luke Schoonmaker. How dare you pick the Bears? Because I picked the Vikings. I'm going on the other side of this.
That's a good pick, too.
Yeah, I'm going on the other side of this. They've been really a great fantasy defense all season long, with the exception of 1 or 2 games. So they've been great. Brian Flores with the blitz. He's going to bring it. Caleb Williams got sacked 9 times a couple of weeks ago at home against the Patriots. The Vikings have a better pass rush on that. They're going to go nuts going after and making some big plays here. So what we're saying is this could be a very ugly quarterback game in Chicago this week.
Yeah, I fully expect that. And I would have liked the Vikings, but I could not afford them. So I went with the Bears. But I think both sides will get their turnovers, get their sacks. It's going to be a gross game all together. That is it for today's episode. That's it for our week of shows for week 12. We hope you the best of luck in your week 12 matchup. Have a great week. We'll talk to you on Monday. Bye, y'all.